Do you ever feel trapped by your own emotions? Like anger, fear, or sadness have become unwelcome guests who've overstayed their welcome, controlling your decisions and limiting your potential? You're not alone. What if I told you that these very emotions that seem to hold you back could become your greatest source of power and peace? Today, we'll explore the ancient art of emotional alchemy, transforming the lead of negative feelings into the gold of inner strength and serenity. This wisdom, inspired by metaphysical pioneers like Thomas Troward and Ralph Waldo Emerson, offers a compassionate pathway to freedom from emotional bondage. Subscribe now and join me on this journey of profound transformation as we uncover the Emotion Code, Mastering Your Inner State for Peace and Power. The Emotion Code, Mastering Your Inner State for Peace and Power. Preface. Dear seeker of inner peace, you've taken a courageous step by opening these pages. In a world that often encourages us to suppress, ignore, or medicate our emotions, you've chosen the path of awareness and transformation. This journey we're about to embark upon together isn't about eliminating emotions. It's about understanding them as messengers, as energy in motion, as the very fabric of our human experience. Each of us carries wounds from our past, moments when we felt rejected, afraid, or unworthy. These experiences have shaped our emotional landscape, creating patterns that may no longer serve us. Yet within these very patterns lies the seed of our liberation. As Thomas Troward taught us, the divine mind within you holds infinite healing potential, waiting only for your conscious direction to manifest. Throughout this book, we'll gently explore the full spectrum of your emotional world. We'll identify the triggers that activate old wounds, learn the sacred art of the conscious pause, and discover how to transmute difficult emotions like anger, fear, and grief into sources of wisdom and strength. Most importantly, we'll practice cultivating joy and gratitude as your natural emotional baseline. This transformation isn't about forcing change through willpower alone. As Emerson reminds us, true change comes through alignment with higher principles, through recognizing the spiritual laws that govern our inner world. The process may at times feel challenging, but remember, each moment of awareness is a victory. Each act of self-compassion a step toward wholeness. You already possess everything you need for this journey. Your willingness to look within is evidence of the healing that has already begun. Let us proceed together, with gentleness and courage, toward the emotional mastery that leads to authentic power and lasting peace, with compassion for your journey. Chapter 1. The Emotional Landscape. Understanding the spectrum and purpose of feelings. The living language of emotion. Emotions are not simply reactions to be managed or inconveniences to be tolerated. They are the living language of your soul. Each feeling that moves through you carries a message, an intelligence, a purpose that seeks expression. When we approach our emotional world with curiosity rather than judgment, we begin to decode this profound inner communication system. Consider for a moment how you've been taught to relate to your emotions. Perhaps you learned that certain feelings were acceptable while others were not. Maybe you were praised for stoicism and criticized for sensitivity. Our culture often categorizes emotions as either positive or negative, creating an unconscious hierarchy that leads us to embrace some aspects of our experience while rejecting others. This fragmentation is the root of much of our suffering. The truth, as James Allen beautifully expressed, is that a man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. Nike. Your emotional landscape is this garden, containing both delicate flowers and sturdy weeds, each with its own place in the ecosystem of your being. The goal is not to create a garden of only pleasant emotions, but to understand the purpose and wisdom in all that grows within you. The spectrum of human experience. Let us explore this spectrum with compassion and clarity. Joy, love, and peace. These expansive emotions connect us to our highest potential. They remind us of our natural state and our inherent worthiness. When we experience these emotions, we're aligned with what Troward called the divine mind, that infinite intelligence that flows through all life. Anger, frustration, and resentment. These fiery emotions signal boundary violations or unmet needs. They contain vital energy that, when properly directed, can fuel positive change and self-advocacy. Your anger is not your enemy, it is a guardian of your worth. Fear, anxiety, and worry. These contractive emotions alert us to perceived threats. They arise from our deepest instinct for self-preservation. When we listen to their message rather than becoming overwhelmed by their intensity, they can guide us toward genuine safety and wise discernment. Sadness, grief, and longing. These tender emotions honor our attachments and our capacity for love. They speak to what we value most deeply. Your tears are not a sign of weakness, but evidence of your heart's profound capacity for connection. Shame, guilt, and unworthiness. These painful emotions reflect internalized judgments and perceived separation. They arise when we believe we've fallen short of our own or others' expectations. Even these most difficult feelings carry wisdom when approached with gentle awareness. The purpose behind the pattern. Nothing in nature is random, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson. A thing appears random only through the incompleteness of our knowledge. This profound insight applies equally to our emotional world. What appears as chaotic or random emotional reactions actually follows precise patterns established early in our lives. Your emotional responses were originally adaptive. They helped you navigate your environment and protect yourself from perceived harm. The child who learned to suppress anger in response to an unpredictable parent was developing a survival strategy. The teenager who built walls around their heart after rejection was attempting to prevent future pain. These patterns served a purpose, even if they no longer support your highest good. Understanding this truth allows us to approach our emotional patterns with compassion rather than criticism. There is deep wisdom in acknowledging that every aspect of your emotional landscape, even those parts you wish to transform, arose from your mind's attempt to protect you. This recognition is the foundation of genuine healing. Emotions as energy in motion. The word emotion contains a profound truth. It is energy in motion, emotion. Feelings are not static entities, but dynamic currents of life force moving through your body-mind system. When we resist these currents, we create internal dams that block the natural flow of our vital energy. Florence Scovel. Shin understood this principle when she wrote about non-resistance as a pathway to peace. Resistance is hell, she noted, for it places man in a state of torment. When we fight against what we're feeling, we multiply our suffering. The path of transformation begins with allowing emotions to move through us without becoming identified with them. This doesn't mean we're passive in the face of difficult emotions. Rather, we become like the mindful observer of a powerful river, respecting its force while maintaining our position on the riverbank. We can witness anger rising and falling without becoming consumed by its fire. We can feel fears trembling without allowing it to dictate our choices. We can honor sadness without drowning in its depths. The wisdom of the whole. Our cultural tendency to fragment the emotional spectrum into good and bad categories creates unnecessary suffering. As Emerson reminds us, the universe is represented in every one of its particles. Your wholeness includes every emotion in the human repertoire. When we reject any part of this spectrum, we reject an aspect of our own wholeness. Healing begins when we expand our capacity to hold all of our emotions with equal presence and compassion. This doesn't mean we encourage destructive expressions or harmful actions. Rather, we learn to distinguish between the pure energy of an emotion and the conditioned reactions that often accompany it. Anger itself is simply energy. Anger expressed as verbal cruelty is a conditioned response that can be transformed. The alchemists of old understood that base metals could be transmuted into gold through specific processes. Similarly, our emotional alchemy involves recognizing that even our most difficult feelings contain precious elements waiting to be refined. The lead of resentment contains the gold of healthy boundaries. The mercury of anxiety holds the silver of appropriate caution. The iron of grief carries the diamond of profound love. Embracing your emotional intelligence. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to consider a new relationship with your emotional world. one based on curiosity, respect, and the recognition of inherent wisdom. Your emotions are not problems to be solved, but messengers to be heard. They are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be integrated. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore practical ways to identify your emotional triggers, develop the sacred art of the conscious pause, and transform specific challenging emotions into sources of power and peace. For now, simply hold this truth. Every emotion that moves through you is part of your human inheritance, a thread in the rich tapestry of your being. Your healing journey doesn't require you to become someone different, only to embrace the fullness of who you already are. As Thomas Troward wrote, "The spirit is in itself a new life, and when the creative power of this new life is brought to bear on old conditions, it must necessarily transmute them into something new." This transmutation begins with the simple yet profound act of witnessing your emotions with compassionate awareness. Remember, dear one, you are not your emotions. You are the vast consciousness that witnesses them. In this witnessing lies your freedom. Chapter 2. Identifying your triggers. Becoming aware of reactive patterns. The hidden architecture of reaction. Beneath the surface of our conscious awareness lies an intricate network of associations, memories, and beliefs that shape our emotional responses. These patterns operate with such speed and subtlety that we often find ourselves in the grip of a powerful reaction before we've even registered what triggered it. A casual comment from a colleague, a particular tone of voice, or even a facial expression can activate emotional responses that seem disproportionate to the present moment. This hidden architecture wasn't constructed randomly. As Ralph Waldo Emerson observed, every man's condition is a solution in hieroglyphic to those inquiries he would put. Your reactive patterns contain profound information about your deepest values, unmet needs, and unhealed wounds. When we approach these patterns with gentle curiosity rather than self-judgment, they become doorways to greater self-understanding and eventual liberation. The anatomy of a trigger. A trigger is essentially a stimulus that activates a pre-established neural pathway in your brain, leading to an automatic emotional response. These pathways were formed through significant emotional experiences, particularly those from early life when your brain was most malleable. The trigger itself is rarely the true cause of your distress. It is merely the key that unlocks a much older story. Consider Maria, who finds herself becoming intensely anxious whenever her supervisor calls her into an unscheduled meeting. The meeting request itself isn't inherently threatening, but it activates Maria's childhood experience of being unexpectedly called to the principal's office and publicly reprimanded. Her body responds to the present situation as if it were facing that same childhood threat, flooding her system with stress hormones and preparing for emotional danger. This mechanism evolved as a protective measure. Your brain's attempt to keep you safe by quickly identifying potential threats based on past experiences. As James Allen noted, man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. These automatic responses were once adaptive strategies, but they may now limit your freedom and distort your perception of present reality. The mirror of relationship. Our most powerful triggers often emerge in the context of close relationships. The people with whom we share our deepest connections have unparalleled access to our vulnerable places, not because they intend harm, but because intimacy naturally reveals what we most deeply fear, desire, and protect. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote about the reciprocal action between our inner state and our outer experience. The relationships in your life act as mirrors, reflecting back to you the aspects of yourself that seek healing and integration. When you find yourself repeatedly triggered by someone close to you, consider the possibility that they are unknowingly touching a tender place within you that longs for acknowledgement and care. This understanding doesn't mean you should tolerate harmful behavior. Rather, it invites you to distinguish between situations that are genuinely unsafe and those that are uncomfortable, because they activate old wounds. This discernment is essential for true healing to occur. Mapping your emotional terrain. To transform your relationship with triggers, you must first become aware of their presence and patterns in your life. This mapping process requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to look honestly at your reactions without judgment. Remember Florence Scovel Shinn's wisdom. The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. Begin by noticing the situations, interactions, or environments that consistently evoke strong emotional responses in you. These might include criticism or feedback, even when constructively offered, feeling ignored or overlooked in social situations, others expressing strong emotions, particularly anger, being rushed or pressured to make decisions quickly, perceived rejection or abandonment, situations where you feel powerless or without choice, comparison to others or feeling inadequate, uncertainty or unpredictability. As you identify these patterns, approach them with the gentle curiosity of a compassionate observer. Ask yourself, what emotion arises most strongly in these moments? Where do I feel this in my body? What thoughts accompany this feeling? Does this reaction remind me of anything from my past? The body's wisdom. Your body holds profound wisdom about your emotional patterns. Long before your conscious mind recognizes a trigger, your body has already begun responding, perhaps through tension in your shoulders, a knot in your stomach, shallow breathing, or a racing heart. These physical sensations are the earliest indicators that you've encountered something that resonates with past pain or perceived threat. Developing body awareness is therefore essential to identifying your triggers before they escalate into overwhelming reactions. Throughout your day, practice pausing to notice your physical state, particularly during interactions or situations that feel challenging. This simple practice of embodied awareness creates a vital space between stimulus and response, a space in which your freedom to choose how you react gradually expands. As Emerson wisely noted, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. The body's signals are part of what lies within, offering guidance if we learn to listen with respect and attention. The role of projection. One of the most subtle yet powerful aspects of our reactive patterns involves projection, the unconscious tendency to attribute to others qualities or emotions that actually belong to ourselves. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as seeing our own shadow reflected in others, while Emerson spoke of the law of compensation, where what we perceive externally corresponds to something within us. When you find yourself intensely triggered by someone else's behavior, consider asking, is there any way in which I do something similar, perhaps in a different form? Am I rejecting in another what I cannot accept in myself? This inquiry isn't meant to blame yourself for others' actions, but to reveal the hidden connections between what triggers you externally and what you struggle to embrace internally. For example, John finds himself intensely irritated by his colleague's perfectionism, experiencing it as judgmental and controlling. Upon reflection, he realizes that he holds himself to equally impossible standards, but has never acknowledged his own perfectionist tendencies. His colleague's behavior triggers him precisely because it mirrors a disowned aspect of himself. This recognition doesn't invalidate John's experience or excuse potentially problematic behavior in others. Rather, it offers a pathway to deeper self-understanding and eventual freedom from reactive patterns. As we reclaim our projections, we reclaim our wholeness. From unconscious reaction to conscious response. The ultimate purpose of identifying your triggers is not to eliminate them entirely. Some sensitivity to your environment and relationships is both natural and necessary. Rather, the goal is to transform unconscious reactions into conscious responses by creating space between the trigger and your reaction to it. As James Allen wrote, self-control is strength, right thought is mastery, calmness is power. This mastery begins with awareness, the simple yet profound act of witnessing your patterns with compassion rather than judgment. Each moment of awareness is a victory, regardless of whether you're able to change your reaction in that instant. Remember that this work takes time. The neural pathways of your reactive patterns were established over years or decades. They will not be transformed overnight. Be gentle with yourself as you undertake this exploration. As Thomas Troward reminds us, the law of growth is that we must gradually pass from the stage of mere spontaneous or automatic use of the creative power to the stage of its use under the guidance of conscious intelligence. The practice of trigger awareness. As we conclude this chapter, I offer you a simple practice to deepen your awareness of triggers in daily life. 1. Each evening, reflect on moments during the day when you felt a strong emotional reaction. 2. For each instance, note what was happening externally, the situation, what was said or done, and internally, your emotions, body sensations and thoughts. 3. Ask yourself with gentle curiosity, what about this situation might have triggered me? Does it remind me of anything from my past? What might this reaction be trying to protect me from? 4. Acknowledge any insights with compassion, thanking your emotional system for its attempts to keep you safe, even if the strategy is no longer serving you. 5. Consider how you might wish to respond differently if a similar situation arises in the future. This simple reflection practice gradually builds your capacity for self-awareness without self-judgment. As Florence Scovel Shinn wisely noted, the game of life is the game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. By becoming aware of your triggers, you begin to change the thoughts and responses you send out into the world, thereby transforming what returns to you. In the next chapter, we'll explore the transformative power of the conscious pause, that sacred space between stimulus and response, where your freedom to choose resides. For now, simply practice noticing with compassion the patterns that have long operated beneath your awareness. This noticing itself is the beginning of profound change. Chapter 3. The pause button, moving from reaction to conscious response. The sacred space of choice. Between every stimulus and response lies a space, a moment of infinite potential that often goes unnoticed in the rush of daily life. This space, however brief, contains the seed of your freedom. It is the pause button of consciousness, the doorway to transformation, the sacred threshold where reaction can become response. As Ralph Waldo Emerson observed, in the moment of your triumph, when all is won, then you are vulnerable to defeat. So too, in the moment when a trigger activates your emotional system, when you stand at the precipice of habitual reaction, you are simultaneously presented with the opportunity for a new choice. This paradox, that our greatest vulnerability contains our greatest potential, lies at the heart of emotional mastery. The conscious pause is not merely a technique, it is a way of being. It represents your inherent capacity to witness your experience rather than being completely identified with it. Thomas Troward referred to this as the higher mode of intelligence, where we recognize ourselves as more than our automatic thoughts and feelings. We are the awareness in which these experiences arise. The neuroscience of pause. Your brain is designed with multiple pathways for processing emotional stimuli. The quick route, through the amygdala and limbic system, evolved to protect you from immediate danger. It bypasses your higher reasoning centers in favor of speed, triggering physiological responses before your conscious mind has fully registered what's happening. This is why you might find yourself in the midst of an emotional reaction before you've had time to consider a more measured response. The slower route, involving the prefrontal cortex, allows for more nuanced assessment and thoughtful choice. This pathway enables you to consider context, remember your values, and respond in alignment with your deeper wisdom. The conscious pause activates this secondary pathway, creating space for your higher intelligence to guide your actions. What's remarkable is that through consistent practice, you can strengthen the neural connections that support this pause. As you repeatedly interrupt the automatic flow from trigger to reaction, you gradually rewire your brain's default settings. What once required deliberate effort eventually becomes your natural way of being. Cultivating presence, the foundation of pause. The ability to pause begins with cultivating presence, the art of being fully awake to your experience as it unfolds moment by moment. In our hyper-connected world, with its constant distractions and demands for attention, presence has become a radical act of self-reclamation. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The quality of your presence determines the quality of your choices. When your awareness is scattered across worries about the future, ruminations about the past, or distractions in the present, your capacity to pause is diminished. You become more susceptible to automatic reactions precisely because you're not fully present to notice the space where choice resides. Begin by bringing gentle awareness to your breath, not changing it, simply noticing its natural rhythm. Feel the sensations of air entering and leaving your body. When your mind wanders, as it naturally will, gently guide your attention back to the breath without self-criticism. This simple practice strengthens your presence muscle, making the conscious pause more accessible when you need it most. Recognizing early warning signs. Your body always speaks first. Before a full emotional reaction takes hold, your physiology offers subtle signals that a trigger has been activated. Perhaps your jaw tightens, your breathing becomes shallow, your stomach knots, or your shoulders rise toward your ears. These physical responses precede conscious awareness of emotional distress, providing a precious early warning system if you're attuned to notice them. Florence Scovel Shinn spoke of intuition as God in action, and these bodily signals are a form of intuitive guidance, your inner wisdom alerting you to pay attention before a reaction gains momentum. By developing sensitivity to these early warning signs, you expand the window of opportunity for the conscious pause. Practice regularly scanning your body throughout the day, particularly during interactions or situations that might trigger reactivity. Ask yourself, how does my body feel right now? Is there tension or constriction anywhere? Has my breathing changed? This body awareness becomes an anchor for the conscious pause. The 3-step pause practice. When you notice a trigger has been activated, whether through bodily sensations, emotional shifts, or recognizing a challenging situation, implement this simple 3-step practice. 1. Breathe and name. Take a deliberate breath, extending the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. Silently name what you're experiencing. Anger arising, fear present, or simply triggered. This naming activates your prefrontal cortex, bringing conscious awareness to what might otherwise remain an unconscious reaction. 2. Feel and allow. For just a moment, allow yourself to feel the emotion in your body without following the narrative about why you're feeling it. Where do you experience this emotion physically? What sensations accompany it? This step interrupts the automatic chain of thoughts that typically fuel emotional reactions. 3. Choose and respond. From this more centered place, ask yourself, what is needed here? How would my wisest self respond? Then choose your response consciously, aligned with your deeper values rather than temporary emotional states. This entire process might take only a few seconds, yet these seconds make the difference between unconscious reaction and conscious response. As Emerson noted, the ancestor of every action is a thought. The pause allows you to choose which thoughts will become the ancestors of your actions. Expanding your window of tolerance. Each of us has what psychologists call a window of tolerance, the range of emotional activation within which we can remain present and make conscious choices. When triggers push us beyond this window, we enter states of either hyperarousal, overwhelming anxiety, anger, panic, or hypoarousal, numbness, disconnection, shutdown. The practice of the conscious pause gradually expands this window, allowing you to remain present with increasingly challenging emotions without becoming overwhelmed by them. This expansion doesn't happen through force or suppression, but through the gentle persistence of returning to presence whenever you notice you've been triggered. Thomas Troward understood this principle when he wrote about the law of growth, that transformation occurs not through struggle, but through consistent alignment with higher principles. Each time you practice the pause, you're aligning with the principle of conscious choice, rather than automatic reaction, gradually expanding your capacity for emotional resilience. Pausing in relationship. Some of our most challenging triggers arise in the context of close relationships, where emotional stakes are highest and old wounds most easily activated. The conscious pause becomes particularly valuable in these moments, creating space for connection rather than conflict. When triggered in relationship, consider adding these elements to your pause practice. 1. Signal your need for a moment. I notice I'm feeling reactive right now. I need a moment to gather myself so I can respond thoughtfully. 2. If possible, create physical space. Step outside, move to another room, or simply take a few steps back to help interrupt the automatic pattern. 3. Remember that the other person's behavior may be coming from their own triggers and wounds, not from an intention to hurt you. 4. Return to the interaction when you feel centered enough to respond from your wiser self rather than your wounded self. This relational pause honors both your need for self-regulation and the relationship itself. As Florence Scovel Shinn wisely noted, your word is your wand. The words you speak after a conscious pause will create very different outcomes than those spoken from the heat of reactivity. The pause as spiritual practice. Beyond its practical benefits, the conscious pause is a profound spiritual practice, a moment of remembering your true nature beyond conditioned patterns. In that space between stimulus and response, you touch something essential about your being, your inherent freedom to choose. Emerson spoke of the aboriginal self that exists beneath our social conditioning, the authentic core of our being that knows itself as connected to the universal intelligence. The pause allows this deeper self to guide your responses rather than letting habitual patterns dictate your behavior. In Eastern spiritual traditions, this practice is connected to the concept of witnessing consciousness, the capacity to observe your thoughts and emotions without being completely identified with them. This witnessing perspective doesn't reject or suppress emotion. Rather, it holds emotional experience in a larger field of awareness, from practice to presence. As you continue to practice the conscious pause, you'll notice a subtle but profound shift. What began as a deliberate technique gradually becomes your natural way of being. The space between stimulus and response widens, not through effort, but through the consistent habit of remembering to pause. James Allen understood this progression when he wrote, "Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts bad fruit." Each time you choose the pause over automatic reaction, you plant seeds of greater awareness that eventually bear the fruit of natural presence. Be patient with yourself in this process. There will be times when triggers overwhelm your capacity to pause, moments when you find yourself in the midst of reaction before remembering your practice. These are not failures, but opportunities to begin again with compassion. As Thomas Troward reminds us, the law of growth is that we gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. The practice of pausing. As we conclude this chapter, I offer you this simple daily practice to strengthen your capacity for the conscious pause. 1. Set an intention each morning to notice opportunities for pausing throughout the day. 2. Create reminders in your environment. Perhaps a small symbol on your desk, a notification on your phone, or a note on your mirror that prompt you to take a conscious breath and check in with yourself. 3. When you notice you've been triggered, implement the 3-step pause practice. Breathe and name, feel and allow, choose and respond. 4. Each evening, reflect on moments when you successfully paused and how it affected the outcome. Also note with compassion any instances where you reacted automatically, seeing them as opportunities for learning rather than reasons for self-criticism. 5. Before sleep, set an intention to strengthen your pause practice the following day. Remember that the conscious pause is not about controlling or suppressing your emotions. It is about creating space to experience them fully while choosing how to express and respond to them. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it. Owing to the vibratory power of words, whatever man voices, he begins to attract." In the next chapter, we'll explore how to work specifically with anger and frustration, transmuting these powerful energies into forces for positive change. The conscious pause you've learned here will be the foundation for that transformation. For now, practice noticing the sacred space between stimulus and response, the doorway to your freedom. On Chapter 4, alchemizing anger and frustration, transmuting destructive energy. The misunderstood messenger. Of all the emotions in our human repertoire, perhaps none is more misunderstood than anger. We've been taught to fear it, suppress it, or express it in ways that damage our relationships and ourselves. Yet beneath its fiery surface, anger carries vital messages about our boundaries, needs, and values. When approached with consciousness, this powerful energy can be transmuted from a destructive force into a catalyst for positive change. Thomas Troward understood this principle of transmutation when he wrote, "The spirit is in itself a new life." And when the creative power of this new life is brought to bear on old conditions, it must necessarily transmute them into something new. Anger, when met with the conscious awareness you've been cultivating, contains precisely this creative power, the energy needed to transform conditions that no longer serve your highest good. The sacred fire, within. Anger in its pure form is simply energy, a surge of life force that arises in response to perceived threats to your physical safety, emotional well-being, or core values. This energy serves an essential protective function, mobilizing resources to defend what matters most to you. The heat of anger can burn away apathy and resignation, fueling the courage needed to address injustice or create necessary change. Ralph Waldo Emerson recognized this when he observed, "A good indignation brings out all one's powers." The key word here is good. Anger that is conscious rather than reactive, directed toward constructive action rather than destruction. This distinction is crucial for the alchemical work of transmutation. The problem isn't anger itself, but our relationship to it. When we fear this emotion, we tend to either suppress it, turning its energy inward, often manifesting as depression or physical illness, or express it unconsciously, creating harm to ourselves and others. Neither approach allows us to access the wisdom and power that anger, properly understood, can offer. Understanding the anger spectrum. Anger exists on a spectrum from mild irritation to rage. Each point on this spectrum carries different qualities and requires different approaches. Irritation and annoyance are lower intensity forms that often signal minor boundary crossings or values conflicts. These milder forms provide opportunities to practice the conscious pause before they escalate into stronger reactions. Frustration typically arises when our efforts toward a goal are blocked or when our expectations aren't met. It contains energy for problem solving and perseverance when channeled constructively. Anger proper emerges when we perceive significant threat or injustice. This more powerful energy demands respectful attention and conscious direction. Rage represents anger that has overwhelmed our capacity for self-regulation. Often connected to past trauma, rage temporarily hijacks our higher reasoning abilities, making the conscious pause especially challenging but all the more necessary. Resentment is anger that has been suppressed and held over time. As Florence Scovel Shinn wisely noted, resentment has ruined millions of lives. It is the poison of the mind, body, and affairs. This calcified form of anger requires special attention in our alchemical work. By recognizing where your experience falls on this spectrum, you can apply the appropriate level of consciousness and care to the transmutation process. The anatomy of triggered anger. When anger arises in response to present circumstances, it often carries echoes of past wounds. Current triggers activate old pain, amplifying your emotional response beyond what the immediate situation might warrant. This layering of past and present creates the reactivity that so often leads to regrettable words and actions. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself." The situations that trigger your anger aren't creating your emotional response. They're revealing patterns that already exist within you. Patterns often formed long before you had the consciousness to choose them. Consider Michael, who responds with disproportionate anger when his partner is late for dinner. On the surface, his anger appears to be about the current inconvenience. Deeper exploration reveals that Michael's father was chronically unreliable, frequently missing important events in Michael's childhood. His current anger carries the accumulated pain of those earlier experiences. making a simple tardiness feel like a profound betrayal. This understanding doesn't invalidate Michael's feelings or excuse harmful expressions of anger. Rather, it creates the compassionate context needed for genuine transformation. By recognizing the deeper sources of our triggered responses, we begin the alchemical process of separating the pure energy of anger from the old stories that intensify and distort it. The alchemy of anger, a 5-step process. True emotional alchemy doesn't involve suppressing anger or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it requires bringing full consciousness to this powerful energy, honoring its message while transforming how it moves through and from you. Here is a 5-step process for this sacred work. 1. Recognize and name. When you feel anger arising, use your pause practice to create space for recognition. Name the emotion specifically. I'm feeling irritated, frustration is present, or I notice rage moving through me. This naming activates your prefrontal cortex, beginning the alchemical process. 2. Embody and contain. Feel the physical sensations of anger in your body, the heat, tension, or surge of energy. Breathe with these sensations, allowing them to be present without acting on them immediately. This containment isn't suppression, it's creating a sacred vessel for transformation. 3. Investigate with compassion. Ask yourself, what is this anger trying to protect or preserve? What value or boundary feels threatened? Is there an old wound being activated here? Listen for the wisdom within the emotion, separating present reality from past conditioning. 4. Extract the essence. Identify the core energy and message of your anger, apart from the story your mind is creating about the situation. Perhaps it's highlighting a need for respect, signaling that a boundary needs reinforcement, or providing energy for necessary change. 5. Direct with consciousness. Channel this clarified energy toward constructive expression and action. This might involve setting a clear boundary, making a request, taking a stand for your values, or simply acknowledging what matters to you. As Thomas Troward taught, the law is that we create by thinking, but the law in its higher working is that we think by consciously realizing our relation to the Supreme Spirit. This conscious relationship to a higher principle transforms anger from a reactive force into a creative one. The language of transmuted anger. How we express anger determines whether it will heal or harm our relationships and ourselves. The alchemical process includes transforming the very language we use when communicating about our anger. Consider the difference between these approaches. Reactive language. You always disrespect me. You made me so angry. This is ridiculous. I can't believe you did that again. Transmuted language. I feel hurt when I'm interrupted in meetings. I value being heard and respected. I'm feeling angry right now. I need a moment to gather my thoughts so I can communicate clearly. This situation isn't working for me. Here's what I need going forward. The first set of statements blames others, speaks in absolutes, and projects responsibility outward. The second set owns the feeling, connects it to needs and values, and takes responsibility for clear communication. As Florence Scovel Shinn reminds us, your word is your wand. The words you choose when expressing anger either perpetuate old patterns or create new possibilities. Working with resentment. Healing calcified anger. Resentment, anger held over time, requires special attention in our alchemical practice. This calcified form of anger often operates beneath conscious awareness, coloring our perceptions and poisoning our well-being while we remain unaware of its influence. Emerson spoke to this when he wrote about the law of compensation. The harm of the improved machinery may compensate its good. Resentment is the harmful machinery of the mind, a strategy originally designed to protect us that eventually causes more suffering than it prevents. The transmutation of resentment begins with honest acknowledgement. Ask yourself, who or what am I still holding resentment toward? What haven't I fully forgiven or accepted? This inquiry isn't about condoning harmful actions or denying injustice. Rather, it's about recognizing that holding resentment harms you far more than it impacts those toward whom it's directed. Florence Scovel. Shin offered this powerful practice. I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Whether or not your spiritual path includes Christian language, the principle remains profound. Releasing resentment to a higher wisdom creates space for healing and freedom. This release often requires grieving what wasn't and cannot be. The apology never received, the recognition never given, the love never expressed. As you allow yourself to feel this grief fully, the hardened energy of resentment begins to soften and flow again, becoming available for more life-affirming purposes. Anger as a catalyst for change. Properly transmuted, anger becomes a powerful catalyst for positive change, both internally and in the world around you. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears." When you transform your relationship with anger, you transform what you attract into your life. Internally, transmuted anger provides the energy needed to establish healthy boundaries, honor your values, and advocate for your needs. It fuels the courage to say no to what diminishes you and yes to what enhances your well-being. This isn't selfishness, but self-honoring, the recognition that you cannot truly serve others from a place of self-abandonment. Externally, this same energy can fuel constructive action towards social change. Many of history's greatest movements for justice were powered by transmuted anger, the fierce commitment to creating a more equitable world channeled into strategic, non-violent action. As Emerson noted, nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm, and properly directed anger provides precisely this enthusiastic energy for meaningful change. The daily practice of anger alchemy. To develop your capacity for transmuting anger, I offer these daily practices. 1. Body awareness. Throughout the day, notice where and how anger manifests in your body. Does your jaw tighten? Do your shoulders rise? Does heat rise in your chest? This awareness helps you catch anger earlier in its progression. 2. Trigger inventory. Keep a simple journal of situations that trigger your anger, noting patterns and themes. Look for connections to past experiences and core values. 3. Sacred expression. Create private, constructive outlets for expressing anger, perhaps vigorous exercise, writing unsent letters, or speaking your truth aloud when alone. These practices help discharge the physical energy of anger while honoring its message. 4. Values clarification. Regularly reflect on what matters most to you. When anger arises, connect it to the values being threatened or violated, using this understanding to guide constructive action. 5. Forgiveness. Practice. Each evening, review the day and notice any resentments beginning to form. Practice releasing these through whatever form of forgiveness resonates with your spiritual understanding. Remember that this alchemical work takes time. As Thomas Troward wrote, "The law of growth is that we gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. Each conscious engagement with anger builds your capacity for transformation." The gift within the challenge. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to consider anger in a new light, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a messenger bearing gifts of wisdom and energy. When approached with consciousness, even your most difficult anger can be transmuted into a force for healing and positive change. The fiery energy that once seemed destructive contains precisely the power needed to forge a new relationship with yourself and others. The frustration that felt like an obstacle becomes the fuel for perseverance toward meaningful goals. The resentment that poisoned your well-being transforms into compassionate wisdom about human frailty, both yours and others. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, "What we seek we shall find, what we flee from flees from us." When you turn toward anger with conscious awareness, rather than fleeing from or fighting against it, you discover the sacred fire within, the purifying flame that burns away what no longer serves you, revealing the gold of your authentic power and peace. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to work with fear and anxiety, emotions that contract rather than expand our energy. The alchemical principles you've learned here will serve as the foundation for that exploration. For now, practice bringing consciousness to your anger, trusting that within its heat lies the potential for profound transformation. Chapter 5. Dissolving Fear and Anxiety. Cultivating Trust and Presence. The Protective Whisper. Fear is perhaps the most primal of all human emotions, a vigilant guardian designed to protect us from harm. In its most basic form, fear alerts us to genuine threats, preparing our bodies to fight, flee, or freeze in response to danger. This protective mechanism has ensured our survival as a species for countless generations. Yet in our modern world, this ancient system often operates beyond its original purpose. Rather than responding to immediate physical threats, our fear now activates in response to perceived social rejection, anticipated future problems, or memories of past pain. What was once a momentary state has for many become a chronic condition. Anxiety that colors every aspect of life with its contractive energy. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote about the law of tendency. He observed that thoughts and emotions, when repeated, create pathways that become increasingly automatic. Fear, when habitually experienced, establishes such pathways, making anxious anticipation our default response to life's uncertainties. The good news is that these same principles that created chronic anxiety can be applied to its dissolution. As we bring conscious awareness to our fears, we begin to recognize them not as absolute truths, but as protective whispers that can be acknowledged with gratitude and then evaluated with wisdom. Understanding the fear spectrum. Like anger, fear exists on a spectrum from mild concern to overwhelming terror. Each point on this spectrum has different qualities and purposes. Concern and caution represent the wisdom aspect of fear, the appropriate assessment of potential risks that allows for wise planning and preparation. These milder forms serve us well when held in balance with trust and presence. Worry occurs when the mind fixates on potential future problems, often creating elaborate scenarios of what might go wrong. This future-oriented anxiety removes us from present reality and drains energy that could be directed toward constructive action. Anxiety represents a more pervasive state of nervous system activation, characterized by physical symptoms like rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, digestive disturbances, and muscle tension. This state often becomes self-perpetuating as we begin to fear the sensations of anxiety themselves. Panic and terror are intense, overwhelming experiences of fear that temporarily shut down access to our higher reasoning capacities. These states typically trigger the full fight-flight-freeze response, making conscious choice extremely difficult. Phobias are specific fears that have become attached to particular objects, situations, or experiences, often connected to past traumatic events or learned associations. These focused fears can create significant limitations in daily life. By recognizing where your experience falls on this spectrum, you can apply appropriate techniques for transformation. The approach that helps with mild worry may differ from what's needed during a panic attack, though the underlying principles remain the same. The anatomy of fear. Fear operates through a complex interplay of body, mind, and spirit. Understanding this interplay is essential for the alchemical work of transformation. Physically, fear activates your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response that prepares your body for emergency action. Your heart rate increases, breathing becomes shallow, blood flows to major muscle groups, and digestive processes slow. These physiological changes are designed for short-term emergency response, not as a chronic state of being. Mentally, fear narrows your perspective, focusing attention on potential threats while filtering out information that might contradict the fearful narrative. This narrowing served our ancestors well when facing predators, but becomes problematic when we need creative solutions to complex life challenges. Spiritually, fear represents a disconnection from what Ralph Waldo Emerson called the oversoul, that greater intelligence and love in which our individual consciousness participates. Fear tells us we are separate, vulnerable entities facing a hostile world alone, rather than expressions of a greater life that supports and sustains us. This multi-dimensional understanding allows us to address fear at each level of our being, calming the body, reframing mental narratives, and reconnecting with spiritual trust. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "Fear is man's only adversary. By working simultaneously with body, mind, and spirit, we dissolve this adversary not through combat, but through transformation." The false evidence appearing real. The acronym FEAR, false evidence appearing real, offers profound insight into the nature of most modern anxiety. While our ancient fear response evolved to address immediate physical threats, today's fears often involve elaborately constructed mental scenarios about what might happen in the future. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. Our fearful thoughts create internal representations of reality that feel utterly convincing, yet often have little connection to present truth." Consider Sarah, who experiences intense anxiety about public speaking. When asked to give a presentation, her mind immediately generates images of humiliation, forgetting her words, being judged harshly, losing respect. Her body responds to these mental images as if they were happening in the present moment, triggering the full physiological fear response. Yet these scenarios exist only in her imagination. They are false evidence appearing real. This understanding doesn't invalidate Sarah's experience or suggest she should just get over it. Rather, it offers a pathway for transformation through conscious awareness. By recognizing that she is responding to mental constructs rather than present reality, Sarah can begin to create space between the fearful thoughts and her response to them. The alchemy of fear, a 5-step process. Just as with anger, the transmutation of fear involves bringing full consciousness to this powerful energy. Here is a 5-step process for this alchemical work. 1. Recognize and name. When you feel fear arising, use your pause practice to create space for recognition. Name the specific quality of fear you're experiencing. Worry is present. I notice anxiety in my body, or panic is arising. This naming helps activate your prefrontal cortex, beginning to restore access to your higher reasoning capacities. 2. Regulate your nervous system. Address the physiological aspects of fear directly through conscious breathing. Extend your exhale slightly longer than your inhale, perhaps counting to 4 as you inhale and 6 as you exhale. Place one hand on your heart and one on your abdomen, feeling the gentle movement of your breath. These simple practices signal safety to your nervous system. 3. Inquire with compassion. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? What is the story my mind is creating about this situation? Is this fear based on present reality or future projections? Listen with kindness without judging yourself for feeling afraid. 4. Distinguish wisdom from worry. Within every fear lies a core of legitimate concern, the wisdom aspect of fear that seeks to protect what you value. Identify this core wisdom while recognizing where the mind has elaborated beyond what's helpful. Ask, what reasonable precautions might address the legitimate concern here? What part of this fear is excessive worry that doesn't serve me? 5. Return to presence. Gently bring your attention back to the present moment, the only point where you have actual power to respond. Notice the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, the feeling of your feet on the ground. From this place of presence, take whatever action is appropriate, even if that action is simply to continue breathing mindfully. As Thomas Troward taught, the subjective mind is amenable to suggestion. This 5-step process essentially offers new suggestions to your subconscious mind, gradually retraining it to respond to life's uncertainties with presence rather than panic. Working with uncertainty, the root of anxiety. At the heart of most anxiety lies our discomfort with uncertainty. The human mind craves predictability and control, yet life consistently presents us with situations whose outcomes cannot be guaranteed. This fundamental tension between our desire for certainty and life's inherent unpredictability generates much of our chronic anxiety. Ralph Waldo Emerson addressed this tension when he wrote about abandonment to the nature of things. He recognized that true peace comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from aligning with the larger intelligence that orchestrates the universe. This alignment requires a profound trust. Not that everything will happen as we wish, but that whatever happens contains the potential for growth and meaning. Cultivating comfort with uncertainty involves several practices. 1. Distinguish between productive and unproductive worry. Productive worry leads to specific actions that address legitimate concerns. Unproductive worry cycles through the same thoughts repeatedly without leading to meaningful action. When you catch yourself in unproductive worry, gently redirect your attention to what's within your control. 2. Practice both and thinking. Anxiety often involves either-or thinking, seeing only best or worst-case scenarios. Practice holding multiple possibilities simultaneously. This situation might be challenging, and I have resources to meet those challenges. Or, I feel uncertain about the outcome, and I can respond to whatever arises. 3. Develop your uncertainty muscle. Deliberately engage in small activities with uncertain outcomes. Trying a new food, taking a different route home, striking up conversation with someone new. These small practices gradually expand your comfort with not knowing what will happen. 4. Connect with those who've navigated similar uncertainties. Hearing others' stories of moving through uncertain times can provide both practical guidance and emotional reassurance. Seek out individuals or communities who have faced similar fears and emerged with wisdom to share. As Florence Scovel Shinn wisely noted, the game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. By changing how you relate to uncertainty, you change what life reflects back to you, gradually shifting from anxious anticipation to curious engagement with life's unfolding. From hypervigilance to presence. Many who struggle with chronic anxiety have developed a state of hypervigilance, a constant scanning for potential threats that keeps the nervous system in a perpetual state of low-grade alarm. This vigilance often developed as an adaptive response to genuinely threatening circumstances, particularly in childhood when we had limited resources for self-protection. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Circumstances do not make the man, they reveal him." Our current patterns of hypervigilance reveal earlier circumstances that required such vigilance for emotional or physical survival. Recognizing this can bring compassion to our process of transformation. The shift from hypervigilance to presence involves retraining the nervous system to recognize safety as well as danger. This retraining includes 1. Actively noticing safety cues. Throughout your day, deliberately notice signs of safety in your environment, the comfortable chair supporting you, the reliable shelter of your home, the presence of trustworthy others. This conscious attention to safety helps counterbalance the automatic focus on potential threats. 2. Creating islands of safety. Develop specific activities, spaces, or relationships where you consistently feel secure and relaxed. Regular immersion in these islands gives your nervous system experiences of safety to draw upon during more challenging times. 3. Practicing sensory grounding. When anxiety arises, deliberately engage your senses to anchor yourself in present reality. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This practice interrupts the future-focused worry cycle and returns you to the only moment where peace is possible, the present. 4. Cultivating self-compassion. Speak to yourself with the same kindness you would offer a frightened child. Rather than criticizing yourself for feeling anxious, try, "It's understandable you're feeling this way. You're doing the best you can, and I'm here with you through this difficult feeling." As Thomas Troward noted, the law of growth is that we gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. Each time you practice shifting from hypervigilance to presence, you strengthen the neural pathways that support this transformation. Faith as the antidote to fear. At its deepest level, the dissolution of fear involves cultivating what both spiritual traditions and modern psychology recognize as essential to human well-being: faith or trust in life itself. This isn't blind optimism or denial of legitimate concerns, but a grounded confidence in your capacity to meet life's challenges with resourcefulness and resilience. Emerson spoke to this when he wrote, "All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen." This trust doesn't guarantee specific outcomes, but offers the profound reassurance that whatever comes, you have access to the intelligence and strength needed to respond appropriately. Florence Scovel Shinn expressed it this way: "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. This acting as if what you need will be provided at the moment of need, whether that's courage, clarity, or creative solutions, gradually reprograms the subconscious patterns that generate chronic anxiety." Practical ways to cultivate this faith include: 1. Maintaining evidence of support. Journal. Regularly record instances where you received what you needed at the right time, where apparent setbacks led to unexpected gifts, or where you found strength you didn't know you had. Review this evidence when fear arises. 2. Practicing conscious surrender. When facing situations beyond your control, practice consciously releasing your grip through prayer, meditation, or simply stating, "I've done what I can. I now release this situation to the higher wisdom that orchestrates the universe." 3. Connecting with something larger than yourself. Whether through nature, spiritual community, creative expression, or service to others, regular connection with something beyond your individual concerns puts personal fears in perspective and reminds you of the larger context in which your life unfolds. 4. Remembering past resilience. Reflect on previous challenges you've navigated successfully. What inner resources helped you through those times? How did you find your way when the path wasn't clear? This remembrance builds confidence in your capacity to meet current and future uncertainties. As James Allen wrote, "The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears." By cultivating faith as the antidote to fear, you gradually shift what your soul attracts, moving from experiences that confirm your anxieties to experiences that validate your trust. The daily practice of fear. Alchemy. To develop your capacity for transmuting fear, I offer these daily practices. 1. Morning nervous system regulation. Begin each day with 5 minutes of conscious breathing, setting the tone for your nervous system before engaging with the day's activities and potential stressors. 2. Worry containment. Designate a specific worry time each day, perhaps 15 minutes in the evening, when you deliberately focus on your concerns. When worries arise outside this time, gently postpone them. "I'll think about this during my worry time. For now, I'm choosing to focus on what's in front of me." 3. Reality testing. When anxious thoughts arise, practice asking, "Is this thought absolutely true? How do I know? What's another way of seeing this situation?" This inquiry interrupts the automatic acceptance of fearful narratives. 4. Presence. Bells. Set random reminders on your phone or use natural transitions in your day, walking through doorways, stopping at red lights, as presence bells that call you back to the here and now, interrupting the mind's tendency to time travel into anxious futures. 5. Evening reflection. Before sleep, review moments when you successfully shifted from fear to presence. Celebrate these victories no matter how small, reinforcing the neural pathways of transformation. Remember that this alchemical work takes time and patience. As Thomas Troward wrote, "We advance by more carefully observing the principles of the law of our own being." Each conscious engagement with fear builds your capacity for presence and trust. The gift within the challenge. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to consider fear in a new light, not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a messenger pointing toward your deepest values and your capacity for trust. When approached with consciousness, even your most difficult anxieties can be dissolved into the clear water of present awareness. The contractive energy that once seemed to imprison you contains within it the precise information you need about what matters most. The worry that felt like a burden becomes a doorway to deeper trust. The panic that seemed overwhelming transforms into an opportunity to discover your innate capacity for self-regulation and presence. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, fear always springs from ignorance. As you bring the light of conscious awareness to your fears, the ignorance, not knowing what's actually happening in the present moment, gradually dissolves. What remains is the simple truth of your experience right now, and the profound recognition that this moment, just as it is manageable. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to work with sadness and grief, emotions that connect us to our heart's capacity for love and attachment. The alchemical principles you've learned here will serve as the foundation for that exploration. For now, practice bringing consciousness to your fears, trusting that within their constriction lies the potential for expansive freedom and peace. Chapter 6. Navigating sadness and grief, allowing healthy processing and release. The tender landscape of loss. In a culture that often celebrates happiness as the only acceptable emotional state, sadness and grief remain largely misunderstood. We're frequently encouraged to cheer up, look on the bright side, or get over it, messages that deny the profound importance of these tender emotions in our human journey. Yet sadness and grief are not signs of weakness or failure. They are evidence of our capacity for attachment, meaning, and love. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote about the law of correspondence, the principle that our outer experiences reflect our inner states. When we experience loss, whether of a relationship, opportunity, health, or dream, our sadness corresponds precisely to the significance of what has been lost. This correspondence isn't something to be avoided, but honored as a testament to the depth of our caring. As we enter this tender landscape together, know that the purpose isn't to eliminate sadness or grief from your emotional repertoire. Rather, it's to learn how to move through these emotions in ways that honor their wisdom while preventing them from becoming stuck or overwhelming. The alchemy here isn't about turning sadness into happiness, but about transforming how we relate to the inevitable losses that accompany a fully lived life. Understanding the grief spectrum. Like other emotions we've explored, sadness and grief exist on a spectrum with different qualities and expressions. Disappointment represents a milder form of sadness that arises when expectations aren't met or hopes don't materialize as anticipated. This everyday sadness passes relatively quickly, but still deserves acknowledgement. Sadness proper is a deeper response to loss or separation that may persist longer and affect our energy, motivation, and outlook. This emotion often invites us to slow down, turn inward, and process what matters to us. Grief is the complex, multifaceted response to significant loss. Not just a single emotion, but a process involving waves of different feelings, including sadness, anger, guilt, and even moments of peace or joy. Grief has its own timeline that rarely conforms to external expectations. Depression occurs when sadness becomes persistent and pervasive, often accompanied by changes in sleep, appetite, energy, and the ability to experience pleasure. While connected to grief, clinical depression may require additional support beyond the practices offered here. Despair represents the darkest end of the spectrum, a loss of hope and meaning that makes it difficult to envision any positive future. This profound suffering calls for compassionate professional support, alongside the spiritual understanding we're exploring. By recognizing where your experience falls on this spectrum, you can approach it with appropriate care and understanding. What helps with disappointment may differ from what's needed during deep grief, though the underlying principles of compassionate presence remain consistent. The wisdom and purpose of sadness. In our happiness-focused culture, we rarely consider that sadness might serve essential functions in our emotional and spiritual development. Yet this tender emotion carries profound wisdom when we're willing to listen. Ralph Waldo Emerson understood this when he wrote, "When it is dark enough, you can see the stars." Sadness often reveals what truly matters to us, clarifying our values and priorities in ways that happiness alone cannot. It slows our pace, turns our attention inward, and creates space for deeper reflection on the meaning of our experiences. Physiologically, Sadness signals to others that we need support, activating the caregiving instincts of those around us. It also conserves energy during times when we need to withdraw and process significant changes. These biological functions reflect the social nature of human beings and our interdependence on one another. Psychologically, sadness facilitates the integration of loss into our ongoing life narrative. It creates a necessary pause that allows us to update our internal maps of reality when something significant has changed. Without this pause, we might continue operating from outdated assumptions that no longer match our current circumstances. Spiritually, sadness often opens the heart in unique ways, softening the boundaries of our separate self and connecting us to the universal experience of impermanence and loss. Many spiritual traditions recognize this openness as a doorway to deeper compassion and wisdom. When we understand these purposes, we can approach sadness not as a problem to be solved, but as a natural process to be honored, a necessary season in the cycle of emotional life. Grief as a sacred journey. Grief represents one of the most profound emotional journeys we undertake as human beings. Whether mourning the death of a loved one, the end of a significant relationship, the loss of health, or the passing of a cherished dream, grief takes us into territory that transforms our very identity. James Allen spoke to this transformative quality when he wrote, "Circumstances do not make the man, they reveal him." Grief reveals aspects of ourselves we might never have discovered in more comfortable circumstances. Our capacity for endurance, the depth of our love, our ability to hold seemingly contradictory emotions simultaneously. While grief follows no predictable timeline or sequence, most who have studied this territory recognize certain aspects of the journey. Shock and denial. Initially, we may experience numbness or disbelief as the mind protects us from the full impact of the loss. This natural buffer allows us to absorb the reality gradually, rather than all at once. Anger and protest. As the reality of the loss begins to penetrate, we may feel anger at the unfairness of the situation. At others we perceive as responsible, at the divine, or even at the person or thing we've lost. This anger often masks the more vulnerable feelings of helplessness beneath it. Bargaining. The mind may attempt to regain a sense of control through if-only thinking, making deals with fate or the divine in an attempt to reverse or mitigate the loss. This negotiation reflects our natural resistance to permanent change. Despair and depression. As the finality of the loss becomes undeniable, we may enter a period of deep sadness, withdrawal, and questioning of meaning. This descent is not pathological, but a necessary part of integrating the reality of what has changed. Acceptance and integration. Gradually, we begin to accommodate the loss into our understanding of life. This doesn't mean forgetting or getting over it, but finding ways to carry the loss while still engaging with life. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "Every great work, every big accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision, and often just before the big achievement comes, apparent failure and discouragement. The integration of grief often follows this pattern, moments of connection and meaning emerging just when the darkness seems most complete. These aspects rarely unfold in a linear sequence. Rather, grief tends to move in spirals, revisiting different emotions as we gradually build the capacity to hold the full reality of our loss. Honoring this non-linear nature is essential to healthy grieving. The alchemy of sadness and grief, a 5-step process. Just as with other emotions, the transmutation of sadness involves bringing conscious awareness to its energy. Here is a 5-step process for this alchemical work. 1. Acknowledge and name. When sadness arises, create space to recognize it without judgment. Name it specifically. I'm feeling disappointed. Sadness is present, or I'm grieving. This naming validates your experience and begins the process of conscious engagement. 2. Allow and contain. Create safe containers for feeling the full depth of your sadness. Perhaps a specific time each day, a private space in your home, or the presence of a trusted friend or therapist. Within these containers, allow the emotion to move through you without resistance, experiencing its physical sensations, the thoughts it generates, and the memories it evokes. 3. Express with compassion. Find forms of expression that honor your sadness without amplifying it. Perhaps writing in a journal, creating art, moving your body, or sharing your experience with someone who can listen without trying to fix your feelings. This expression prevents sadness from becoming stuck or suppressed. 4. Connect with universal experience. Recognize that your sadness, however personal it feels, connects you to the universal human experience of loss and impermanence. As Emerson wrote, "In the order of nature, we cannot render benefits to those from whom we receive them, or only seldom. But the benefit we receive must be rendered again, line for line, deed for deed, cent for cent, to somebody." Your willingness to fully experience your grief becomes part of this universal exchange, creating capacity for compassion that extends beyond your personal circumstances. 5. Integrate and honor. Find ways to integrate what you've lost into your ongoing life, perhaps through rituals of remembrance, creative expressions that honor what mattered, or commitments that carry forward the essence of what you valued. This integration allows the loss to become part of your wisdom rather than remaining an unhealed wound. As Thomas Troward taught, the law of growth is that we must gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. Each time you consciously engage with sadness using this process, you strengthen your capacity to move through this emotion without becoming overwhelmed or stuck within it. Working with unacknowledged grief. Many of us carry what might be called unacknowledged grief, losses that haven't been fully recognized or processed, either because they weren't socially validated or because circumstances required us to be strong and move forward without adequate time for mourning. This unprocessed grief often manifests as persistent fatigue, unexplained irritability, emotional numbness, or a pervasive sense that something is missing. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this when she wrote about the importance of digging up the weeds in the garden of the mind. Unacknowledged grief represents such weeds, emotions that continue to draw energy from our present life because they haven't received the attention they require. Healing this backlog of grief involves several approaches. 1. Inventory of losses. Take time to identify significant losses throughout your life, including those that might seem small to others but mattered deeply to you. These might include childhood moves, friendships that ended, opportunities missed, aspects of health or youth, or dreams that had to be modified or abandoned. 2. Delayed mourning rituals. Create simple rituals to acknowledge these past losses, perhaps lighting a candle, writing a letter to your younger self, or creating a small memorial object that honors what mattered. These rituals give form to feelings that may have remained formless for years. 3. Witness and validation. Share your unacknowledged losses with someone capable of witnessing them without minimizing their importance. This might be a trusted friend, therapist, or spiritual guide. The simple act of having your grief witnessed can facilitate profound healing. 4. Physical release. Unprocessed grief often becomes stored in the body as tension or constriction. Gentle movement practices like yoga, tai chi, or expressive dance can help release these physical holdings, allowing emotions to move and complete their natural cycle. As James Allen wrote, the soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. By bringing conscious attention to unacknowledged grief, you begin to transform what your soul attracts, moving from unconscious repetition of loss patterns to conscious integration of their wisdom. Grief without closure, the challenge of ambiguous loss. Some of the most difficult grief experiences involve what psychologists call ambiguous loss, situations where closure remains elusive because the loss itself is unclear or unresolved. Examples include loving someone with dementia, physically present but psychologically absent, having a missing family member, physically absent but psychologically present, or experiencing betrayal that leaves unanswered questions. Ralph Waldo Emerson spoke to this challenge when he wrote about compensation. For everything you have missed, you have gained something else. With ambiguous loss, finding this something else becomes particularly challenging because the loss itself remains undefined or unresolved. Navigating such grief requires special approaches. 1. Naming the ambiguity. Explicitly acknowledge the unclear nature of your loss. I'm grieving someone who is still here but changed. Or, I'm mourning a relationship without knowing the full truth of what happened. This naming validates the unique difficulty of your situation. 2. Creating symbolic closure. When actual closure isn't possible, create symbolic rituals that acknowledge the reality of your loss while honoring what remains unresolved. This might involve writing letters that won't be sent, creating art that expresses the complexity of your feelings, or developing personal ceremonies that mark important transitions. 3. Holding paradox. Practice holding seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously. My loved one is both here and not here, or I am both moving forward and still waiting for answers. This capacity for paradoxical thinking builds resilience in the face of unresolved situations. 4. Finding meaning within uncertainty. Explore ways to create meaning despite the lack of clear resolution. This might involve connecting with others in similar situations, advocating for greater awareness of ambiguous loss, or developing new understanding of your own capacity to live with unanswered questions. As Thomas Troward noted, the spirit is in itself a new life, and when the creative power of this new life is brought to bear on old conditions, it must necessarily transmute them into something new. And this transmutation becomes especially powerful when applied to ambiguous loss, allowing you to create new meaning even when clear answers remain elusive. From isolation to connection, the social nature of grief. One of the most painful aspects of profound sadness and grief is the sense of isolation it often creates. In a culture uncomfortable with these emotions, we may feel pressure to grieve privately or move on before we're ready, intensifying feelings of loneliness during an already difficult time. Yet, as Emerson recognized, our strength grows out of our weakness. The vulnerability of grief, when shared appropriately, can create deeper connections and more authentic relationships. The key lies in finding the right balance between honoring your need for privacy and allowing others to support you through your sadness. Consider these approaches to navigating the social dimensions of grief. 1. Selective sharing. Identify those in your life capable of witnessing your sadness without trying to fix it or rush you through it. Be selective about sharing your deepest grief only with those who have earned this trust through their capacity for compassion. 2. Clear communication of needs. Help others support you by clearly expressing what you need. I just need you to listen right now, not offer solutions. Or, I'd appreciate your company even if we don't talk much about how I'm feeling. Most people want to help, but don't know how unless guided. 3. Grief communities. Consider connecting with others experiencing similar losses through support groups, either in person or online. These communities normalize grief experiences that might otherwise feel isolating or abnormal. 4. Ritual and commemoration. Participate in or create shared rituals that acknowledge your loss within a community context. These might be traditional religious ceremonies or more personal gatherings that allow collective expression of what has changed. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it." By consciously engaging with the social dimensions of grief, you pull the strings of connection and support rather than remaining isolated in your experience. Be finding meaning in the darkness. Perhaps the most profound aspect of navigating sadness and grief is the potential for these emotions to transform not just how we feel, but how we understand the meaning of our lives. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, observed that humans can endure almost any how if they have a compelling why. Grief often challenges our existing sense of meaning, while simultaneously offering the opportunity to discover deeper purpose. James Allen spoke to this transformative potential when he wrote, "As the physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, So the man of weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in right thinking. The right thinking in grief isn't positive thinking that denies reality, but meaningful thinking that integrates loss into a larger understanding of life's purpose. This meaning-making process might include 1. Legacy projects. Creating something that honors what you've lost, perhaps a charitable initiative, creative work, or community contribution that carries forward values connected to your loss. 2. Narrative integration. Developing a story about your loss that acknowledges both its pain and the ways it has shaped your understanding, values, or direction in life. This narrative continues to evolve as you gain perspective over time. 3. Post-traumatic growth. Recognizing ways in which navigating grief has developed capacities you might not otherwise have discovered. Perhaps greater compassion, appreciation for the present moment, or clarity about what truly matters to you. 4. Spiritual deepening. Exploring how your experience of loss affects your understanding of life's larger questions about purpose, connection, and what endures beyond physical existence. As Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "The years teach much which the days never know." The meaning that emerges from grief often reveals itself gradually, through the accumulated wisdom of many days lived in the presence of loss. Trusting this process, even when meaning seems absent, is itself an act of faith in life's continuing unfoldment. The daily practice of sadness alchemy. To develop your capacity for moving through sadness and grief with consciousness, I offer these daily practices. 1. Emotional check-ins. Take brief moments throughout your day to notice if sadness is present, perhaps using a simple scale from 1 to 10 to track its intensity. This awareness prevents unconscious suppression while helping you recognize patterns in how sadness moves through you. 2. Compassionate touch. When sadness arises, place one hand over your heart and one on your abdomen, offering yourself the same gentle touch you would give a grieving child. This physical self-compassion activates your parasympathetic nervous system, supporting regulation during difficult emotions. 3. Nature connection. Spend time regularly in natural settings that embody the cycles of life, death, and renewal. Whether watching leaves fall in autumn or observing new growth in spring, nature offers powerful metaphors that contextualize personal loss within larger patterns. 4. Gratitude practice. Even in the midst of grief, briefly noting things you appreciate helps prevent sadness from becoming all-encompassing. This isn't about denying your grief, but about maintaining a balanced perspective that can hold both sorrow and gratitude simultaneously. 5. Creative expression. Maintain a regular outlet for expressing your feelings through writing, art, music, or movement. These creative channels provide both catharsis and the opportunity to transform raw emotion into meaningful expression. Remember that moving through sadness and grief is rarely a linear process. As Thomas Troward wrote, "The law of growth is that we gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. Each conscious engagement with sadness strengthens your capacity to honor its wisdom while preventing it from becoming a permanent state." The gift within the challenge. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to consider sadness and grief in a new light, not as enemies to be avoided, but as teachers offering profound wisdom about what matters most in human experience. When approached with consciousness, even your deepest sorrow can become a doorway to more authentic living and loving. The heaviness that seemed to weigh you down contains within it the gravity that grounds you in what's truly important. The tears that felt like weakness become evidence of your courage to love, despite life's impermanence. The grief that seemed endless reveals itself as a testament to the depth of your capacity for attachment and meaning. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, the invariable mark of wisdom is to see the miraculous in the common. Perhaps nowhere is this more true than in our relationship with sadness and grief. When we bring conscious awareness to these common human experiences, we discover their miraculous capacity to deepen our compassion, clarify our values, and connect us to the universal human journey of loving and losing. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to cultivate joy and gratitude, emotions that can coexist with sadness while gradually shifting your emotional baseline toward greater well-being. The alchemical principles you've learned here will serve as the foundation for that exploration. For now, practice bringing consciousness to your sadness, trusting that within its depths lies the potential for profound wisdom and healing. Chapter 7. Cultivating joy and gratitude, shifting your emotional baseline. The natural inheritance. Joy is our natural inheritance, not a distant achievement to be earned through perfect circumstances, but an inherent capacity woven into the very fabric of our being. Like a stream flowing beneath the surface of daily experience, this wellspring of well-being remains accessible even when covered by the debris of difficult emotions, challenging circumstances, or habitual negativity. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote about the law of being, the principle that our essential nature participates in the joy and creativity of the universal life force. He recognized that positive emotional states aren't merely pleasant experiences, but expressions of our alignment with the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. This understanding transforms how we approach the cultivation of joy and gratitude. Rather than seeing these as states to be manufactured through effort or acquired through achievement, we recognize them as natural capacities to be uncovered through conscious attention. The work isn't about becoming someone different, but about removing the obstacles to experiencing who you already are. Understanding the joy spectrum. Like other emotions we've explored, joy exists on a spectrum with different qualities and expressions. Contentment represents a quiet satisfaction with present circumstances, a peaceful acceptance that allows for deep appreciation of simple experiences. This sustainable form of well-being doesn't depend on excitement or intensity. Pleasure arises from sensory enjoyment, the taste of delicious food, the touch of soft fabric, the sound of beautiful music. These immediate, embodied experiences connect us directly to the present moment. Happiness involves a more active sense of well-being, often connected to achievement, positive social interactions, or favorable circumstances. While more energetic than contentment, happiness still represents a relatively stable emotional state. Joy proper carries a quality of expansiveness and transcendence. Moments when our separate sense of self temporarily dissolves into a larger experience of connection, meaning, or beauty. These peak experiences may be brief, but leave lasting impressions on our emotional landscape. Ecstasy represents the most intense form of positive emotion. Overwhelming experiences of unity, creative inspiration, or spiritual connection that temporarily transcend ordinary consciousness. While these states aren't sustainable as ongoing experiences, they can permanently shift our understanding of what's possible. By recognizing this spectrum, we can appreciate the different flavors of positive emotion without privileging intensity over sustainability or dismissing quieter forms of well-being as somehow insufficient. The neuroscience of positive emotion. Modern neuroscience confirms what wisdom traditions have long understood. Our brains are shaped by what we repeatedly focus upon. The principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong capacity to reorganize itself through new experiences, offers profound implications for emotional well-being. When we consistently direct attention toward what's wrong, threatening, or lacking, we strengthen neural networks associated with negativity and stress. This negative bias served our ancestors well in environments filled with physical dangers, but in modern life, it often creates unnecessary suffering and limits our capacity for joy. Conversely, when we deliberately attend to positive experiences, allowing them to register fully in awareness, we gradually strengthen neural pathways associated with well-being. As neuropsychologist Rick Hanson notes, we can take in the good by giving positive experiences the time and attention needed to be encoded into implicit memory. This understanding aligns perfectly with James Allen's insight that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The habitual focus of our attention literally shapes the physical structure of our brains, creating default patterns that either support or undermine our capacity for joy and gratitude. Gratitude. the gateway to joy. Of all the practices that cultivate positive emotion, perhaps none is more powerful or accessible than gratitude. Ralph Waldo Emerson recognized this when he wrote, "Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you, and to give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude." Gratitude serves as a gateway to joy for several reasons. 1. Attention, redirection. Gratitude practice deliberately shifts attention from what's lacking to what's present, interrupting the negativity bias that would otherwise dominate awareness. 2. Present moment anchoring. Genuine gratitude can only be experienced in the present moment, gently drawing us out of rumination about the past or worry about the future. 3. Recognition of interdependence. Gratitude reminds us that we don't exist in isolation, but are constantly supported by countless seen and unseen contributions from the natural world, other people, and the larger web of life. 4. Counterbalance to entitlement. The practice of gratitude dissolves the sense of entitlement that creates much of our disappointment and frustration, replacing it with genuine appreciation for what might otherwise be taken for granted. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this power when she wrote, "Gratitude is the law of increase, and complaint is the law of decrease." This isn't magical thinking, but a recognition that what we focus upon expands in our experience. Not because external reality changes, but because our perception of it transforms. The alchemy of joy, a 5-step process. Just as we've worked with challenging emotions through conscious awareness, we can approach the cultivation of joy as an alchemical process. Here is a 5-step approach to this transformative work. 1. Notice and name. Become aware of moments of well-being, however subtle. Perhaps a brief feeling of peace while watching a sunset, satisfaction after completing a task, or simple pleasure in a cup of tea. Name these experiences specifically. This is contentment. Joy is present, or I'm experiencing pleasure. This naming strengthens your capacity to recognize positive emotions, even when they're quiet or fleeting. 2. Amplify through presence. When you notice a positive feeling, give it your full attention. Feel its qualities in your body, perhaps warmth in your chest, relaxation in your face, or lightness in your movements. Breathe with the experience, allowing it to expand naturally through your conscious attention. 3. Remove obstacles. Notice if your mind tries to diminish the positive experience through thoughts like, "This won't last," "I don't deserve this," or "But what about all my problems?" Gently recognize these thoughts as habitual patterns rather than truths, allowing them to pass without following their narrative. 4. Connect to values. Reflect on how the experience of joy or gratitude connects to what matters most to you. Perhaps values like connection, beauty, contribution, or growth. This connection to meaning deepens the impact of positive emotions beyond momentary pleasure. 5. Express and share. Find ways to express your positive feelings, perhaps through creative outlets, verbal appreciation of others, or simple gestures that spread well-being. This expression creates a positive spiral where joy generates actions that create more opportunities for joy. As Thomas Troward taught, the subjective mind is amenable to suggestion. This 5-step process essentially offers new suggestions to your subconscious, gradually retraining it to recognize, amplify, and express positive emotions that might otherwise pass unnoticed. Joy amidst difficulty, the paradox of wholeness. One of the most common misconceptions about joy is that it requires the absence of difficulty or suffering. This misunderstanding leads many to postpone happiness until some future time when all problems have been resolved, a time that never arrives in any human life. Ralph Waldo Emerson addressed this directly. The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Phew. This broader perspective allows for a more nuanced understanding where joy coexists with challenge as part of a complete human experience. The capacity to experience joy amidst difficulty isn't denial or toxic positivity. It's the recognition of what James Allen called the law of polarity operating in human experience. Just as physical objects cast shadows in proportion to their substantiality, meaningful lives contain both light and shadow, joy and sorrow, ease and challenge. Practices that support this paradoxical capacity include 1. Both and thinking. Practice holding seemingly contradictory truths simultaneously. This situation is challenging, and I can still appreciate what's going well. Or, I feel sadness about this loss and gratitude for what remains. This cognitive flexibility prevents all or nothing thinking about emotional states. 2. Micro moments of positivity. Even in difficult circumstances, look for small opportunities to experience positive emotions, perhaps brief appreciation of someone's kindness, momentary enjoyment of beauty, or fleeting satisfaction in handling a challenge well. These micro moments, when noticed and savored, gradually shift your emotional baseline. 3. Meaning-focused coping. Connect challenging experiences to values and meanings that transcend immediate circumstances. Ask, how is this difficulty connected to what matters most to me? What deeper purpose might it serve in my development? This meaning-making transforms how difficulties are experienced. 4. Benefit finding. Without denying the reality of challenges, practice identifying potential benefits or growth opportunities within difficult situations. This isn't forced optimism, but genuine curiosity about how challenges might contribute to your development. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy." By consciously including positive emotions within your experience of difficulty, you create patterns that return to you as increased resilience and emotional range. Beyond happiness, eudaimonic well-being. Ancient wisdom traditions distinguish between hedonic happiness, based on pleasure and positive feeling, and eudaimonic well-being, based on meaning, purpose, and living in alignment with deeper values. While both contribute to a full life, eudaimonic well-being offers a more sustainable foundation for ongoing joy. Emerson spoke to this distinction when he wrote about being useful rather than merely being happy. This perspective aligns with research showing that lives organized around contribution and meaning generate more sustainable well-being than those focused primarily on personal pleasure or achievement. Key elements of eudaimonic well-being include 1. Purpose beyond self. Engagement with causes, relationships, or creative endeavors that transcend purely personal interests, connecting individual action to larger meanings and communities. 2. Expression of signature strengths. Regular opportunities to use your unique combination of talents, skills, and qualities in service of what matters to you. 3. Growth orientation. Approaching life as a continuous learning journey where challenges become opportunities for development rather than obstacles to happiness. 4. Autonomy and authenticity. Making choices aligned with your core values rather than external pressures or conventional expectations. As Thomas Troward noted, the law of growth is that we gradually pass from the spontaneous operation of the law in us to its operation by our own knowledge of it. Eudaimonic well-being represents this conscious alignment, not just feeling good momentarily, but living in ways that express your highest understanding of what constitutes a good life. From scarcity to abundance, the gratitude mindset. At the heart of sustainable joy lies a fundamental shift in perception, from seeing life through the lens of scarcity to recognizing the abundance that exists even amidst limitation. This shift doesn't deny real constraints or challenges, but changes how we relate to them. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are." When we habitually focus on what's missing, we become people characterized by perceived lack, regardless of our external circumstances. Conversely, when we consistently notice what's available, we become people characterized by perceived abundance, even when facing genuine limitations. The gratitude mindset involves several key perspectives. 1. Sufficiency consciousness. Recognizing when you have enough rather than constantly comparing your situation to an ideal or to others who have more. This doesn't preclude healthy aspiration, but grounds it in appreciation of present resources. 2. Gift awareness. Viewing aspects of life we typically take for granted, health, relationships, natural beauty, basic necessities, as gifts rather than entitlements. This perspective generates genuine appreciation for what might otherwise be overlooked. 3. Opportunity orientation. Approaching limitations as invitations to creativity rather than simply as obstacles. Constraints often generate innovation and appreciation that wouldn't emerge in conditions of unlimited resources. 4. Legacy. Thinking. Considering how your present circumstances build upon the contributions of countless others who came before you, from family members who supported your development, to strangers whose work created the infrastructure you rely upon daily. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it." The gratitude mindset consciously pulls the strings of attention toward what's working, available, and supportive, gradually transforming your emotional baseline through this consistent focus. The social dimension of joy. While inner practices are essential for cultivating joy and gratitude, equally important is the social context in which these emotions flourish. Positive emotions don't exist solely within individuals, but arise through our connections with others and the communities we create together. Ralph Waldo Emerson recognized this when he wrote about friendship. The glory of friendship is not the outstretched hand, not the kindly smile, nor the joy of companionship. It is the spiritual inspiration that comes to one when you discover that someone else believes in you and is willing to trust you with a friendship. This mutual recognition and trust creates a field in which joy naturally emerges. Practices that nurture the social dimension of joy include: 1. Active appreciation. Regularly expressing specific appreciation for others' qualities, contributions, or simply their presence in your life. This practice benefits both the giver and receiver, strengthening connections while cultivating gratitude. 2. Shared celebration. Creating rituals and occasions to collectively acknowledge achievements, milestones, or simply the pleasure of being together. These celebrations need not be elaborate to generate significant positive emotion. 3. Collaborative creativity. Engaging in creative activities with others, whether making music, preparing food, solving problems, or building community projects. This shared creativity often generates flow states where joy emerges naturally. 4. Service and contribution. Participating in activities that benefit others or contribute to causes larger than yourself. Such service consistently correlates with increased well-being, particularly when it involves direct connection with those being served. As James Allen wrote, "The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears." By consciously cultivating joyful connections with others, you attract more such experiences into your life, creating an upward spiral of positive emotion and relationship. The daily practice of joy alchemy. To develop your capacity for cultivating joy and gratitude, I offer these daily practices. 1. Morning intention. Begin each day by setting a specific intention to notice moments of well-being, however subtle. This primes your attention system to recognize positive experiences that might otherwise pass unnoticed. 2. 3 good things. Each evening, identify 3 positive experiences from your day, taking time to savor each one fully. For each experience, note: what happened? What role did you play in creating or noticing this good thing? What does this experience reveal about what you value? 3. Gratitude letters. Periodically write detailed letters of appreciation to people who have positively influenced your life, being specific about their impact on you. Whether or not you share these letters, The process of writing them deepens your awareness of the support you've received. 4. Joy spotting. Throughout your day, look for moments of joy in unexpected places. Perhaps a child laughing on the street, an elderly couple holding hands, or a tree blossoming despite growing through concrete. This joy spotting trains your attention to recognize beauty and well-being in diverse contexts. 5. Sensory pleasure pauses. Several times daily, take brief pauses to fully experience sensory pleasures. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the taste of a piece of fruit, the sound of music you enjoy. These sensory anchors connect you to present moment well-being. Remember that cultivating joy and gratitude is not about forcing positive feelings or denying difficulties. As Thomas Troward wrote, "The law is that we create by thinking, but the law in its higher working is that we think by consciously realizing our relation to the Supreme Spirit." This conscious relationship allows joy to emerge naturally as an expression of your essential connection to life itself. The gift within the practice. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to consider joy and gratitude not merely as pleasant states to be experienced occasionally, but as fundamental orientations that can gradually become your emotional baseline. When approached with consciousness, these positive emotions become doorways to your natural inheritance, the well-being that is your birthright as a conscious being. The practices that once seemed like disciplines gradually become your default way of engaging with life. The attention that required deliberate redirection begins to naturally orient toward appreciation. The gratitude that started as a daily exercise transforms into a spontaneous response to the gift of each moment. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." The capacity for joy exists within you now, not as a distant achievement, but as an inherent quality of your consciousness. Your practice simply removes the obstacles to experiencing this natural state, allowing what has always been present to shine forth more consistently in your daily life. As we complete our journey through the emotional landscape, remember that all the emotions we've explored, from anger and fear to sadness and joy, are part of your complete human experience. The goal isn't to eliminate certain emotions and cultivate others, but to bring consciousness to the full spectrum, allowing each emotion to deliver its wisdom without becoming stuck in reactive patterns. The emotional mastery you've been developing leads not to control, but to freedom. The freedom to experience life fully, to respond rather than react, and to access the wisdom and energy within each emotional state. This freedom becomes the foundation for authentic power and lasting peace. Conclusion: living with emotional intelligence and inner peace. The journey of integration. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration, it's important to recognize that emotional mastery is not a destination, but a continuing journey. The practices and principles we've explored throughout this book aren't meant to be perfected, but integrated, woven into the fabric of your daily life as ongoing reminders of your capacity for conscious choice in relationship to your emotional world. Thomas Troward expressed this understanding when he wrote about the law of growth, that transformation occurs not through sudden leaps, but through consistent alignment with higher principles. Each time you pause before reacting, each moment you bring compassionate awareness to difficult emotions, each instance where you consciously cultivate gratitude or joy, you strengthen the neural pathways of emotional intelligence and deepen your capacity for inner peace. This integration doesn't happen all at once. As with any meaningful development, there will be moments of clear progress followed by apparent setbacks, times of insight followed by periods of forgetting. What matters is not perfection, but persistence, the willingness to begin again, with compassion, whenever you notice you've been caught in old patterns. The wisdom of the whole spectrum. Throughout our journey together, we've explored the full spectrum of human emotions, from the fiery energy of anger to the contractive force of fear, from the tender landscape of sadness to the expansive territory of joy. Each of these emotional states carries its own wisdom, its own purpose in the ecology of human experience. Ralph Waldo Emerson understood this when he wrote, "The purpose of life is not to be happy, It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. This broader perspective allows us to value all our emotions, not just those that feel pleasant, as essential aspects of a life fully lived. Anger, properly understood, protects what matters and provides energy for necessary change. Fear, when approached with consciousness, offers discernment and appropriate caution. Sadness connects us to our capacity for attachment and honors what we value. Joy reminds us of our natural inheritance as participants in the creative unfolding of life. The goal isn't to eliminate certain emotions and maximize others, but to bring consciousness to the whole spectrum, allowing each feeling to deliver its message without becoming stuck in reactive patterns that create unnecessary suffering. This holistic approach honors the complexity of human experience while providing practical pathways toward greater freedom and peace. From reaction to response, the power of the pause. If there's a single practice that encompasses the essence of emotional mastery, it is the conscious pause, that sacred space between stimulus and response where your freedom to choose resides. This simple yet profound practice interrupts automatic reactions, creating room for wisdom to guide your actions rather than conditioning. James Allen spoke to this when he wrote, "Self-control is strength, right thought is mastery, calmness is power." The pause allows you to access this strength, mastery, and power, not through forcing or suppressing emotions, but through creating space to experience them fully while choosing how to express and respond to them. With consistent practice, this pause gradually extends, becoming less of a deliberate technique and more your natural way of being. What once required conscious effort eventually becomes second nature, not because you've eliminated emotional reactions, but because you've developed the capacity to hold them in a larger field of awareness. This transformation represents true emotional freedom, not freedom from feelings, but freedom in relationship to them. You become less identified with emotional states, recognizing them as weather patterns moving through the sky of your consciousness rather than defining who you are. The alchemy of attention. At the heart of emotional mastery lies the alchemical power of attention. What you consistently focus upon shapes not only your momentary experience, but the very structure of your brain and nervous system over time. This understanding places tremendous power in your hands, the power to gradually transform your emotional baseline through conscious direction of awareness. Florence Scovel. Shin understood this when she wrote, "Your word is your wand. The words you speak create your own destiny." The words here include not just what you say aloud, but the internal dialogue that directs your attention either toward what's lacking and threatening or toward what's supportive and nourishing. This doesn't mean adopting a falsely positive perspective that denies difficulties. Rather, it involves a balanced attention that acknowledges challenges while also recognizing resources, possibilities, and aspects of experience that generate well-being. This balance creates resilience, the capacity to navigate life's inevitable difficulties without becoming overwhelmed or diminished by them. The practices we've explored throughout this book, from the conscious pause to the cultivation of gratitude, all serve this fundamental alchemy of attention. Each represents a different way of directing awareness toward greater wholeness, gradually transforming your default emotional patterns through consistent practice. Embodied wisdom, the intelligence of the body. Throughout our exploration, we've recognized the central role of the body in emotional experience. Emotions aren't abstract mental states, but embodied experiences, felt sensations that carry important information about your relationship to your environment and others. Thomas Troward touched on this understanding when he wrote about the law of correspondence, the principle that inner states manifest in physical form. Your body represents the most immediate manifestation of your emotional life, offering constant feedback about your state of being if you're attentive to its signals. The practices of embodied awareness we've explored, noticing physical sensations associated with different emotions, using conscious breathing to regulate the nervous system, recognizing early warning signs of reactivity, all honor this bodily wisdom. Rather than trying to manage emotions primarily through mental processes, these approaches engage the intelligence of the whole system. This embodied approach aligns with modern understanding of how emotions operate, not as purely cognitive phenomena, but as complex interactions between brain, nervous system, and body. By working with this whole system, rather than just with thoughts, you access deeper levels of transformation that mere thinking cannot reach. The relational field, emotions in context. While much of our work is focused on internal practices, it's essential to remember that emotions don't exist in isolation, but within a relational field. Your emotional patterns were formed in relationship and continue to be activated and potentially transformed through your connections with others. Ralph Waldo Emerson recognized this when he wrote about the law of compensation. It is one of the most beautiful compensations of this life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. The emotional mastery you develop benefits not only you, but ripples outward, positively affecting all your relationships. As you become less reactive and more responsive, you create space for others to do the same. As you learn to express emotions clearly and constructively, you invite similar expression from those around you. As you develop compassion for your own emotional struggles, your capacity to offer genuine understanding to others naturally expands. This relational dimension reminds us that emotional intelligence isn't solely an individual achievement, but a collective possibility. The practices you engage in privately contribute to a larger field of consciousness, gradually shifting not just your personal experience, but the quality of connection available in all your interactions. From theory to practice. Living the wisdom. The true test of any teaching lies not in intellectual understanding, but in lived application. The principles and practices we've explored throughout this book are meant not merely to be comprehended, but embodied, integrated into your daily life as practical pathways toward greater freedom and peace. James Allen expressed this perfectly when he wrote, "The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by, this you will become." The emotional mastery we've been exploring isn't about adhering to external rules, but about aligning with your deepest values and highest vision for how you wish to live. This alignment happens not through force or willpower, but through consistent practice, creating new habits of attention and response that gradually replace old reactive patterns. Each practice we've explored represents a different doorway to this transformation, offering multiple entry points to accommodate different temperaments and circumstances. Some may find the conscious pause most accessible, others the cultivation of gratitude. Some may connect most deeply with embodied awareness practices, others with the alchemical work of transmuting specific emotions. What matters isn't which practices you emphasize, but your consistent engagement with the underlying principles of conscious choice and compassionate awareness. The ongoing invitation. As we conclude our journey together, I offer this not as an ending, but as an invitation to continue the exploration, to keep discovering the freedom and peace available when you bring conscious awareness to your emotional life. The principles and practices we've explored are timeless, offering endless depth for those willing to engage with them consistently. Florence Scovel Shinn reminded us that the game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. The attention you bring to your emotional world today creates patterns that will return to you tomorrow and beyond, either as continued reactivity or as expanding freedom and peace. This understanding places tremendous power in your hands, not the power to control external circumstances or to eliminate challenging emotions, but the power to transform how you relate to whatever arises in your experience. This transformation represents the essence of emotional mastery, not dominance over feelings, but freedom in relationship to them. A final contemplation. As you close these pages and continue your journey, I invite you to consider these questions not once, but repeatedly, allowing their contemplation to guide your ongoing practice. What emotions do I find most challenging, and what wisdom might they be trying to offer me? Where do I notice myself becoming reactive, and what might change if I could pause in those moments? What helps me return to presence when I've been caught in emotional patterns? How might my relationships transform if I brought more consciousness to my emotional expressions? What would it mean to truly accept the full spectrum of my emotional life as part of my human inheritance? What small practice from this book could I commit to implementing daily? These questions have no final answers, but serve as ongoing inquiries that deepen with continued exploration. They represent the spirit of this work, not arriving at fixed conclusions, but cultivating an ever-expanding awareness of your emotional landscape and your capacity for conscious choice within it. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." The emotional mastery we've been exploring lies within you now, not as a distant achievement, but as your natural capacity for awareness, choice, and transformation. My deepest wish is that the principles and practices we've explored together support you in accessing this inherent wisdom, bringing greater freedom and peace to your life and to all whose lives you touch. May your journey continue with courage, compassion, and ever-deepening consciousness. As we come to the end of our exploration of emotional alchemy today, I invite you to reflect. Which emotion in your life is most ready for transformation? Perhaps it's anger that keeps you stuck in resentment, fear that prevents you from taking necessary risks, or sadness that hasn't found its proper expression. What might change if you approach this emotion not as an enemy to overcome, but as a messenger carrying wisdom you need? Before you continue your day, consider this simple practice. The next time you feel a strong emotional reaction arising, pause for just 3 breaths. During those breaths, simply name what you're feeling without judgment. Anger is here, fear is present, or sadness is moving through me. This tiny space between stimulus and response is where your freedom begins, where reaction can transform into conscious choice. This pause alone can be revolutionary in your emotional life. If today's exploration resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our growing community of conscious creators. Your comments mean the world to me. Share which part of today's journey touched you most deeply, or what questions arose as you listened. And be sure to join us next Thursday when we'll dive into the depths of esoteric knowledge, exploring hidden principles that have guided seekers of truth throughout the ages. Until then, remember, your emotions aren't problems to solve. They're powerful energies awaiting your conscious direction.